And you are live, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Newington Town Council regular meeting of February 22nd, 2022. I'm calling the meeting to order at 7:01. If you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to roll call, please.
Councilor Braverman. Councilor Braverman, I believe you're muted.
Far down.
I'm here.
All right, thank you. Councilor Bedrejko.
Here.
Councilor Camillo. Not showing on at this time. Councilor Donahue.
Here.
Councilor Mankey.
Here.
Councilor Nagel.
Here.
Councilor Page.
Present.
Councilor Rada.
Here.
Mayor Del Buono.
Here.
You have a quorum, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, folks, we are moving on to approval of the agenda this evening. Councilor Page, I believe you have a motion.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that I be allowed to present briefly on the train station and have some discussion with the council about that.
So you're moving to add an agenda item to under new business, item D for train station discussion?
Yes, please.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Mankey. Any further discussion on that item? All right, hearing none. Well, are there any other changes to the agenda recommended?
Let's see. And forgive me, I know there was a lot of last minute communication about nominations and appointments. I just wanted to maybe through you, Mayor, if I may ask James, are we all set with those or do I need to say anything about that?
They should be on the screen when we're ready for them.
Okay.
I got to open
And
my
again,
camera.
I apologize for the last minute scramble and that's on me. I'm sorry.
No, that's not a problem. Yeah, that has been amended. And
Thank you.
there is a second item that we had discussed on that Friday that we forgot to add in, which was the mower for the highway department that we
Right.
were
Oh,
going to
that's right.
share with Rocky Hill. So I do have that listed on the screen for you as well. That's the interlocal agreement.
So I would move that as item,
So
new business item E.
just as a point of order, can we make one motion for that, James? Because we have one motion open on the table already, correct?
Yeah, we could add both of them in one motion.
Mitch, would you amend your motion to include the interlocal agreement for the multi-town equipment cooperative as well?
I'd be happy to. Thank you.
All right, so we'll add that as item E under new business.
Actually, have them in reverse.
Okay, so, okay, sorry. All right, so Mitch, you're motioning to add two new items. It would be under 7D would be the interlocal agreement, multi-town equipment cooperative, and item E would be discussion of the Newington train station project. Is that accurate?
That sounds perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. And your second, Tim, is for that?
We'll amend my second to include, to change the changes.
Okay.
The changes affected or whatever.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the changes, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes and we have an amended agenda with two new items. Thank you all. Next item is public participation. Any member of the public may participate in Zoom by raising your hand in the participants window, or if you're calling in, *9 will allow you to raise your hand so that we can see that you would like to be recognized. We do have a 4-minute time limit, and we just ask that you state your name and address for the record before you begin. The first member is Neil J. Ryan.
Hello,
Welcome.
am I coming through?
Yes, you are, Mr. Ryan.
Excellent. Well, yes. Neil Ryan, 237 Brockett Street, the heart of Newington. I want to speak briefly about Roman numeral number 6, item C, ordinance amendment, chapter 121, voting districts, review revised proposal information. Okay, it looks like we are discussing 2 matters under that. The first deals with the number of voting districts to be used in elections. Well, it looks like the council is proposing 7 voting districts with 7 voting locations. This is a much better plan than your previous proposal, whereby we're looking to reduce our voting districts from 8 to 3. It also appears that you're moving a good number of voters from one voting location to another. I'm not sure what the rationale is for these moves, but I'd recommend that the 2 registrars of voters, and I stress this, registrar of voters, in the package, you make reference to the director of Parks and Rec and the superintendent of schools to do this, but it's up to the registrar of voters to begin a serious outreach campaign to inform each of these affected voters where their new voting location is going to be. I would also advise the 2 registrars to begin this process immediately. Otherwise, you run the risk of some major confusion come election day, which I think you'd like to avoid. The second item appears to deal with a proposal for the change in voting locations for standalone referendum votes. I'm not sure if I'm missing something here. It appears that you're proposing to hold all future standalone referendum votes in one location, apparently District 1, the town hall. I can't really understand this proposal at all. A couple of reasons given are, first, that the standalone referendum would cost $34,000, which I guess you don't have in the budget. I would suggest that you find that $34,000 very soon. A good place to start would be the unconscionable $30,000 bonus paid to the town manager. You can easily put that to the standalone referendum. You also use for justification the fact that several other towns follow this process, standalone referendums with voting in one location. Now let's take a look at some of these towns that you list. But first, for the record, you should know that Newington right now has 20,765 active registered voters. The township list, Bethel, has 12,765 registered voters. Ellington, 11,130 registered voters. Wilton, 12,559 registered voters. Plymouth, 8,102 registered voters. Old Saybrook, 9,116 registered voters. I fail to see the justification here. All the towns I listed have far, far fewer voters in Newington. And the idea of following those towns because they have the referendums in one location is just, frankly, just silly. The other point I want to address is that this proposal apparently will apply to standalone referendums only. Now, in our town's past, most referendum votes have been held on election day. This assures a good turnout for voting on the referendum. It also assures continuity for voters since they vote on the referendum at their normal voting location. And apparently you have the money for this process. So are you deliberately planning to schedule nothing but standalone referendums in the future? I can't see that as a good idea. As I said, referendums held on election days bring the best voter turnout, and the process worked very well. If your plan is to schedule all future referendums as standalone votes, you're going to guarantee a low voter turnout. Voters used to voting at the regular voting location are going to be disrupted if this proposal is passed. And come election day for a standalone referendum, it's only going to lead to some chaos, confusion, hostility, angers, a few fender benders, maybe even some fistfights, and possibly even some lawsuits. Now, this sinister proposal appears to be a roundabout way of ensuring a low voter turnout for future referendums. My question, what have you got against referendums? I would suggest that you withdraw this proposal and bury it immediately. There is no reason to fix something that isn't broken. And one last point, if I may add, there's a spreadsheet containing the agenda package of the number of registered voters as of 12/01/2021. In the column, I think it should be helpful if at the bottom of the column, you list the total number of voters. That's not shown. And in the, I think, column 8 of the spreadsheet, proposed voters. It shows the proposed number of voters in the revised districts. And it'd be very helpful if you had a total at the bottom of that column. I think it's 21,741 or something. I think that'd be helpful to put that in there. And you know, I'm glad to hear that Mitch was able to add the discussion of the train station to the agenda. I'd like to talk about that, but I think I'm running out of my time. Where do I stand on the 4 minutes? How much time left to go?
You've
Well,
about.
I'll be quick. I'll say it real quick. You know, this issue of the train station at Cedar Street, this was resolved 3 years ago by the town council, voted 9-0 in favor of a train station at Cedar Street. And that vote included Councilman Nagel, Councilman Budraco, and Councilman Del Bono voted for that Cedar Street location for a train station. And that proposal went to the TPZ at that time. They held public hearings on the issue, and they voted to accept the Cedar Street location for a train station. And I think the TPC vote was about something like 7-1 in favor of the Cedar Street location. So to my mind, the decision was made 3 years ago. I don't know why we're here now discussing this matter again. Well, we know why. Because a certain member of the council, I'll try and be delicate here, a certain member of the town council owns property in Newington Junction. And I get he's using his elected position to personally enrich him, which is like an example of political corruption 101. I mean, you're on this of a lawsuit here if you follow up on this. But with that, I'll say thank you for your time, and it's been good talking to you. Thank you.
All right, the next member of the public is Pat Lange.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I didn't realize I needed to be unmuted.
That's okay, we hear you now.
Okay, I'll be a lot briefer. Okay. I'm Pat Lange, Patricia Lange, Lange, 27 DaCosta Drive in Newington. As a senior citizen in Newington, I feel all standalone referendums warrant more than one polling location. Location and proximity of polling places affect seniors and the disabled to a much greater degree than the more able-bodied citizens who drive. I feel there should be more than one location for these important events. The cost could be more than offset by volunteers now that most COVID restrictions have been removed and most people have been vaccinated. I live in an over 55 complex with senior apartments nearby. Most of us walk to our voting place at Anna Reynolds School. Having a referendum during school hours should not be very costly as the building is already open. Several of my neighbors said they would volunteer as poll workers if a call went out for them. And I suspect this would be the case at other polling places also. So I want to thank you very much for your time and for listening to me.
Thank you, Ms. Lang. All right. The next caller is Gia Pascarelli.
Hi there. Hi. I'm on my phone, so I hope you can hear me okay, and this is going through.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I did comment last time there was this matter about the polling places and the number of polling stations being reduced. I was really concerned about that. I'm very appreciative to everybody who heard the public comments that day and decided not to reduce the number of polling places. There's a lot of high density, housing developments that are either, proposed or, in the works here in Newington. We're going to have more people. We really don't need fewer polling places. We don't really need confusion. I understand that, the polling places that are where people are being kind of swapped out into a different place. I understand there's a plan in place to get the word out so people are not confused. I feel like having one location for a standalone referendum polling place is a huge mistake. There will be too many people voting. There will be too many people who, now that many of us are going back to the office, will all be trying to go and vote, before and after work. It'll be too congested. it's really unfair. I think it's unfair to the voters of Newington. I think we're willing to support and pay for things that we need in our town. And $34,000, just to my mind, seems like a drop in the bucket compared to the kinds of initiatives like, you know, the new town hall and everything. I think this is something that, I mean, I don't want to put, I don't want to cast a negative aspersion or that anybody would be behind the scenes trying to dissuade voter turnout. I don't want to make that assumption. I'm not comfortable with that. But, you know, in Connecticut and in Newington, you know, I'm proud of everything that we do as a community. And I think we need to support one another and support seniors and walkers and people who work and have, you know, the full slate of polling places for standalone referendums. I also agree with the first caller who said, let's try not to do that. Let's have referendums during normal elections, because, you know, referendums are usually really very specific topics, very important, and they usually require, you know, we want a good turnout. We want the population, we want our residents to, you know, vote on things and everybody to come together and get their, you know, get the opinion out there. Anything we can do to not, anything we can do to encourage and not discourage voting, to me is the most important thing. And that primarily is, you know, not to change how and where we vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pascarelli. Okay, our next caller is Robert Colapi. I apologize if I didn't pronounce that correct.
Yes, the name is Robert Colapi, and I live at 62 Wells Drive North.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'd like to speak to the issue regarding the, you know, where and when referendums will be voted on. And I would agree with the first caller that the best possible solution to this would be to include it in the regular election day. And I would also agree with the first caller, Gia Pascarelli, that anything other than that looks to voter suppression, which is something that all of us here in Newington are adamantly opposed against, I'm assuming. And anything that creates more confusion or difficulty in getting to identifying or getting to a poll to have your opinion heard is a very negative thing for the community as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm just double checking our window. I don't see any other hands up. All right. That concludes our public participation. We will move on to the next item on the agenda. Was there any email correspondence? I believe, let me just look.
I
Folks,
did
did
not
we get-
receive any.
I believe
I
there
did
was
not.
one letter concerning polling places.
That was Forrest Helvey.
I believe Sandy Navis wrote a letter concerning polling places.
Yeah, we did receive one, and I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. One moment, please. Yeah, hers did not request that it be attached to the record. I thought there was one that was, though. So I will search for that. And if nothing else, I will mention it at the second public participation if I come across it. I know we received a couple. I didn't know if any of them were asking to be included.
Mayor,
Yes.
I had one, but it was today, and that was from, it looks like Mick Duffick, D-U-F-F-E-K, but I don't see a request to post this.
Okay.
Michael,
All right.
excuse me, it was Michael Duffick at 7 Parkledge Drive.
Okay.
Can you just forward that to the rest of us, Mitch?
All right, will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks. All right. I think I had received it from someone who ended up speaking publicly instead. So I think we're all set with that. I just wanted to make sure
Okay.
it was the same. Okay. So we are all set with email correspondence. We will move on to remarks by counselors on public participation. Any counselors? Let me just switch my screen, guys. I apologize. There we go. All right, I don't see any hands up. I have thoughts on a few of them, but I may just wait for the presentation from the registrars. Counselor Page?
Just for the record, Mayor, and someone here will correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that Counselor Nagel was involved in that vote. I don't know that he was on the council at that time, was he?
I don't have that in front of me, so I couldn't answer that question adequately.
But
I
we can
don't remember
double check.
that either. I don't remember whether I was or
I can
not.
look back. We have that timeline that we were presented.
Okay.
so we can
I
look
just
back
wanted
at
to check
Thank
that
you.
because I just wanted it to be accurate. If I'm wrong, you'll correct me. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other counselors? All right, we will continue on. The next item on our agenda, we're going to begin our consideration of old business. And we're going to start with a health update regarding COVID-19. Mr. Chapman.
Yes, I just want to report that the COVID incidents are reducing in town. They've been dropping by about 50% each week. The report will come out on Thursday. We have eliminated the tracing program and the greeter at the town hall. We only ask that anyone going into any public building wear a mask and do their social distancing. That may change depending on what we find that occurs on this Thursday, but we're in the right direction and hopefully we will be back to normal within a month or so, if everything goes right. And that's it. Good news.
All right. Council comment or question?
I just want to thank Megan Mankey for all of her hard work. She's done a great job. Thank you.
Any other council comment or question? Okay, we'll continue on. Our next item is the Anna Reynolds School PBC authorization to bid. And I know we have, I see Marnie is with us. Welcome, Marnie. So let me just flip through my packet. I apologize, guys. I'm managing the screen and the packet. It's a lot. So tonight we have before us, we discussed this at our last meeting. The Anna Reynolds School Public Building Committee is looking for us to authorize them to proceed with construction regarding the Anna Reynolds School project in order for them to be able to go out to bid, I believe. Marnie, is Steve on the call? I don't see him.
I don't see him either.
Okay. Marnie, do you want to just speak to this really quickly, just for a quick update?
Yeah, absolutely. And Steve actually was tied up early in the meeting, but he asked me to text him when we were coming up. So I'm just texting him now that we're up. If you can bear with me.
Of course.
But yes, so this is our second meeting. Obviously, the last town council meeting, Steve Woods gave everyone a recap, excuse me, of the project. And where we're at. So we, again, are at the last stage of design called the construction document phase. We have Newfield Construction, our CM, completed a final estimate before going out to bid. The project is within budget rather. And at this point, it's a formality that the town council approve the project to go out to bid, which is a requirement of the state. And I'm here, and I'm not sure if Jennifer's here from KBA, but either way, I'm here. Yeah, I'm here to answer any questions you might have. I have a copy of the entire project budget available to share. Jennifer could also answer any questions, but that's pretty much it.
Okay. I know we did review the budget last meeting, just to make sure everything was looking like it was on target for where it needed to be. And this is, as you mentioned, pretty much just a formality so that we can get started with the bid process. Is there a counselor that would be willing to read the resolution in so that we can discuss further if we need to?
I'll read it in.
Thank you, Counselor Rada.
Resolved pursuant to Chapter 8, Article 10, Section 8-45, Project Building Committees of the Newington Code of Ordinances, and upon the recommendation of the Anna Reynolds School Project Building Committee at their meeting of January 20th, 2022, the Newington Town Council hereby accepts the plans, specifications, and cost estimates for renovations at Anna Reynolds Middle School and authorizes Keith Chapman, Town Manager, or
I should say his.
Should be I found it on 2 errors. It should be elementary school, not middle school, and authorizes Keith Chapman, town manager, or his designee to send the project out to bid.
All right, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Camillo. All right, now if there's any further discussion, we can go ahead. Anyone have any questions, concerns? All right, hearing none, I would ask the counselors to unmute their mics. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. Thank you, Marty and Jennifer, for joining.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you. All right, folks, we are moving on to the next item is the ordinance amendment, chapter 121 voting districts. We do have 2 items under this agenda item. One is to review the revised proposal information, which we do have our registrars on. So they'll be reviewing that. And then secondly, we'll be looking to consider scheduling a public hearing for this item prior to council action on it. So that's what we will be looking to do this evening. So I would like to turn it over. Welcome to Miss Avey and Miss Fox, our 2 registrars.
Good evening, thank you. With the census, as you know, has been completed, and based on the information, the town has been redistricted into only having 2 state assembly districts, the 20th and the 27th. We will remain in the 9th Senate State District, and the new state assembly districts have been done by a reapportionment committee, which consists of equal numbers of Republicans and Democrats. On the map, you see the in red, everything outlined in red is the current districts, and everything colored, the yellow, the pink, the blue, the green, are the proposed districts. As you see, districts 3, 7, and 4 will not be changing. We do have to change a portion of District 1, which is in the blue that James just highlighted, I believe, into District 6. That consists of 830 voters. The streets, it's the south side of Robbins from Maple Hill Avenue to Willard Avenue, the east side of Maple Hill Avenue to Robbins, from Robbins to New Britain Avenue, the north side of New Britain Avenue from Willard to Maple Hill, the west side of Willard from Robbins to New Britain Avenue, and also the streets that also are affected are Vivian, Ridgeway, Johnson, Stewart, Frederick, Theodore, Homecrest, Broadview, Hillside, Bayberry Road, Partridge Drive, Pleasant Run, Lawrence Lane, and Harris Drive. These streets, per the state reapportionment, has to be moved to District 6 and be part of the 20th Assembly District. If you look below into District 5, there's a section of 919 voters that will be going from District 5 to District 6. And those streets are the south side of New Britain Avenue from Church to Willard, the west side of Willard Avenue from New Britain Avenue to Richard Street, the north side of Church Street from Richard Street to Stonehenge Drive, and the north side of Stonehenge Drive. The other streets that are affected: Old Hatchery Lane, Fleetwood Road, Strawberry Lane, Cornish Drive, Lincoln Road, Fox Lane, Turkey Hill Road, Halloran Drive, Robinbrook Drive, Faith Court, Faith Road, Pfister Drive, Alston Road, Rockhole Lane, Winslow Drive, and Pickens Drive. These voters will have to be moved based on the reapportionment and will also be in the 20th Assembly District. We also chose at this time to streamline the 1st and 2nd district. There's a portion of District 1 that is going to go into District 2, and streamlining it would make Robbins Avenue the dividing line. It's the south side of Robbins from Willard to Maine, the west side of Robbins, the west side of Main Street from Robbins to Glenview, east side of Willard from Glenview to Robbins Ave, the north side of Glenview Drive. The streets that are in that clump would be Clifford Street, Cole Avenue, Florence Street, Valentine Road, Valentine Circle, Parker Street, Linwood Avenue, Basswood Street, and Lawton Avenue. We've also moving 885 voters from District 2 to District 1, and that those affected voters are the north side of Robbins from Main Street to the Berlin Turnpike, east side of Main Street from Robbins to Northwood, and the streets that are also affected are Northwood, Centerwood and Southwood Road, Gooddale Drive, Cheney Lane, Lydell Road, Longview Drive, Wakely, Robbins Extension, Ivy Lane, Urban Lane, Forest Drive, Cedarwood Lane, and Berlin Turnpike. The reason for the swapping of the districts 1 and 2 is based on streamlining the districts and lowering the number of voters in each district. On the spreadsheet, District 1 is currently at 3,223 voters, taking out the number that went to the reapportionment and then the numbers we swapped. We've brought the proposed number down to 2,853 voters. And for District 2, which is Ruth Chafee, they have 4,602 voters, and doing the swap with District 1 and 2 brings them down to 4,142. By lowering those numbers, we're helping with the parking issue, which has been historically a chronic complaint from our voters for Districts 1 at Town Hall and 2 at Ruth Chafee. We will also be utilizing greeters at polling locations to make sure their voters are at the correct location. We have swapped. If you're currently District 5, some of you may stay in voting at John Wallace, or you're going to be voting at John Patterson. And the same with John Patterson, you may be voting at John Wallace. So we will be utilizing greeters throughout the parking lots to make sure people are at the right polling location so they don't have to go in, then be told to leave and go to another polling location. And also in years past, the polling workers will continue to carpool, get dropped off, and park further away from the polling locations to accommodate the voters to help with the issue of parking. We are also proposing a standalone referendum and/or town committee primaries be held at one location that's determined by the registrar of voters by section 7-9C warnings of the general statute, which will be here at Town Hall. A standalone referendum is a referendum that is held alone. There's no other election going on for that day. So most,
Not November.
pardon me, Marie?
It's before the November election.
So that's the reason we chose for standalone referendums and for any town committee primaries. The other towns that use this standalone referendum are also Torrington, Vernon, and Farmington, and they also have roughly the same amount or even more voters than we do in Newington. Since 2000, we have had 3 standalone referendums and 1 town committee primary. The town committee primary had under 500 electors to come out to vote. The referendums were the police station referendum in 2003, and there was 22.06% voters turnout. The charter revision in 2009, February 24th, 2009, at 29.92% voter turnout. And the town hall referendum was September 22nd, 2014, and there was a 40% voter turnout. We will be notifying the voters by mail per state statute that before March 22nd and March 29th of 2022. We will also be sending out a second mailer closer to November 8th, 2022, which is the election day. We are also going to utilize our Facebook page, our website, and news flashes with the new voting districts throughout the process, starting now going forward, so voters do know. We also have the support of Superintendent Bill DeMayo from Parks and Recreation, who says we can use his events to notify the voters of the new voting districts. And Superintendent Brummett also says we can put signs up on the school grounds prior to the election to make sure people know of these changes. And the Chamber of Commerce has also said if they have a waterfall festival, they will be more than happy to let us have a booth to notify the voters of these changes. And Marie?
I think Teresa answered it all. I believe every voter in town will be notified one way or another, or twice, or even more. They will see it. But now that the registrars have done their due diligence in accordance with the state redistricting plan, I can look back and say that, in my opinion, all our state legislatures did when holding their press conference and rallying up the voters was to put Newington in a bad light, something that hasn't happened in the previous 30 years while I was the Democratic registrar of voters. We were quite embarrassed by that, and we felt that simply did not trust our judgment. This isn't my first rodeo, after all. I have had to redistrict 3 times before, but this has been the most difficult. I have always taken pride in my work as registrar, and have always strived to make voting in Newington as easily as I possibly could. Our elections always run smoothly and efficiently. Our ability as registrars has never been questioned, and I am hurt by that. We listened to everyone's comments, suggestions, criticisms, and came up with a plan that should make everyone happy. The graph and charts tell the story. We have made sure that every voter in Newington will be able to cast their ballot as easily as they always have. The biggest change in that vote is that voters that currently vote at Patterson School will now vote at John Wallace School. And this is only because we have more voters at Patterson now with redistricting with the assembly districts than at Wallace. And we wanted to make sure that there was enough parking, which is not the case now. We started with just 3 voting locations because the numbers were easier to work with. Once we were able to sit down and take into account all the suggestions from the elected officials, from the public, the voters, we were eventually able to come up with a plan we propose tonight. As well, excuse me, as we all know, the polls close at 8:00 p.m. sharp, but that doesn't mean, excuse me, we or our workers go home at 8:00 with everyone else. Our work is not finished until all the numbers in all the districts are accurate and everyone's vote is counted. We sit down with the town clerk and make sure that all our numbers match. Unlike some other towns that lock everything up and go home at 8:00, only to have to come back to the town hall the next day and do their work. We stay until every single vote is counted and all our paperwork is completed. And the total numbers from each individual polling place matches the main sheet. We have been known to still be working until after midnight. Nobody, including our legislators and local officials, realize what goes on into properly conducting an election, or what goes on into a project like this. The maps, the charts, etc., do not just drop out of the air, up from somewhere. The registrars and their deputies spent many days crunching numbers, preparing the maps and charts. So maybe it shouldn't be the fact that our legislature, Gary Turco, presented a citation to a citizen for what turned out to be a rallying the public against us, when we were, for the most part, get nothing more than aggravation and hurt. As some of the people have said about referendum, it's a standalone referendum. It doesn't happen every year, but the price for one referendum for how many voters you're going to get is not worth the amount to have the whole town open. I would like to thank everyone for their cooperation. And now that our legislatures realize that we can do our job without their help, good luck to Gary and Matt in the short session to do something astronomical for Newington and help our police department with juvenile crime that is rising. I thank everybody for listening. Sorry if I took up too much time, but please, this plan, I believe, is the best, it's the most streamlined that it has been in a long time. And our town committees have been wanting to change this. And may I say something else? They've always asked for one standalone referendum place. Thank you. Good night. Be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marie and Teresa, just stay on in case there's any questions. But I do want to thank you. I know that the last several weeks have been very trying for you. You've been putting in a lot of extra hours and really have done a lot of work on listening to what was provided to you. I know the initial plan that came out wasn't well received. And you took all of the recommendations of all the counselors that reached out, all of the members of the public. I know you've done a lot of work on deliberating and trying to make it meet. So trying to make the plan that you proposed tonight meet what the public wants, but also what you guys feel like you need to make some changes to make it work better for the town. And you are the experts. So we have to do a nice mix of both. And I think that the plan you propose this evening does have a mix of both the needs from the reapportionment as well as some small minor changes that you all see as necessary to streamline the process. and you've taken into account most of what was brought forward to you. So I appreciate the efforts that you put in, and I appreciate the maps. I appreciate all of the numbers. You've really brought us forward a lot of information for consideration. With that being said, I'll open it up for council comment or question. Deputy Mayor Pedrejko.
Yes, I just want to thank our registrars and their assistants for listening to the public. I know the initial proposal that came out kind of, startled us all, but I also understand where it was coming from. It's like, you guys are the expert. You're trying to streamline a process to make it more efficient, more effective. And never was there an intent. I would go to my grave to say that there was never any intent from both of you, from anybody in this town, to deliberately suppress voters. And I feel very bad that you got caught in the brunt of criticism and accusations that are so far from the way I've seen all of you, both of you and your assistants, perform your job over the years. Newington has always had a sterling reputation. We've never had any issues. You've always run elections efficiently, effectively. You put in the hours, and on your own, I know you would have listened to the public and realized that, okay, it would have made things maybe easier for us, but we get it. And you listened to the public, came up with a very much of a wonderful, I think, or a workable, shall I say, new plan, new proposal. And at this point, it's up to the public. We will have a public hearing to see what they feel about this new plan. But I just want to personally say, I know your intentions were always honorable from the very beginning to now, and I'm sorry that you got caught up in some pretty nasty and horrible accusations. So thank you for your work on this.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councilor Page.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to thank the registrars as well very much for your hard work. This has been a difficult process. I also wanted to say, I think the idea of greeters welcoming people at the schools to make sure that they don't get into the building and then get in line to vote, and then they have to be redirected. That's really wonderful. I think that's a great idea. And I think the public should appreciate that very much, especially in this first round of an election where it may be a little confusing. And it seems like you've kept things to a minimum. And I would just say, and I know we're going to hear from the public on this, I share concerns by some of the folks who have spoken and written in about the referendum being standalone at one spot. I'd like to see the data that supports that, and also concerns from our residents that would support that. While other towns may do it, other towns also, as one speaker said, have multiple polling places. So I think we need to just vet that thoroughly. And my last comment is, I'm not sure what juvenile crime has to do with polling places. It seemed like an editorial comment, and it wasn't appropriate for this discussion. But thanks again for your work.
Thank you.
Councilor Rada.
Yes, first of all, again, thank you to both of our registrars and their assistants for all their hard work. This is now, and correct me if I'm wrong, kind of the fourth iteration, because we had the initial proposal and then two proposals a month ago, and you've taken all this into consideration and now come up with this proposal. So I want to thank you for that, and thank you for taking the brunt and taking it on the chin, and but also listening very, very hard and very deeply to what residents have to say. The only other comment or question I have is I would like clarification that we are talking about two different proposals. One is the proposal of these voting districts and the reapportionment based on the state redistricting, and the other is a proposal to provide only one central polling place for standalone referendums and primaries. Is that correct? Okay, I just want to make sure, and I want to clarify for anyone who's listening or may hear about this, that this is not all, both of them aren't included in this one proposal, that we would have two proposals that we would be discussing at some point.
Now, my understanding, it's one proposal, but James might be able to explain it or correct me if I'm wrong.
It would fall under the ordinance. So James, do you want to speak to that?
The ordinance specifically based upon the statutes and the charter is the purview of the council in adopting it. The choice for the registrars to choose one voting location is statutory. It does not apply to the voting districts themselves, and the registrars have the ability to determine that they're going to use one location should we have a standalone referendum, or if we should have a town committee primary where there's a smaller amount of individuals who do come out. That's not included in the voting districts proposal. It's a recommendation they're making that they would be utilizing, but it's not part of the voting districts that you're going to be voting on.
So the public hearing and the ordinance amendment is strictly on the voting locations.
Correct.
Okay, and maybe we need a further discussion or discussion at another time on this, but we will then look at the possible one site referendum / primary voting location as a separate item.
No. No. What will happen is if a referendum were to take place, the registrars would have the ability under the statute to determine if it was going to be held at one location or all districts. And then they notify my office. I create the ballots based upon that recommendation. For a standard election, which takes place in November, whether it be a governor's, a municipal, or a federal election, that's when we're required to utilize all districts that we have for our local assemblies. So if let's say the charter is completed and we decide that we're going to have a referendum in April of next year, that referendum, they could decide under the statute that they wanted to utilize, could be the town hall, maybe we have an issue of power, they have to take it and move it to, say, the high school. They can make the determination of where they want to have that referendum held at under the statute.
So the town council does not vote as to whether or not we want, or for example, a vote on a standalone referendum to take place and have available and accessible all 7 polling locations?
No, you simply set a referendum date. The registrars are then required to either determine if they're going to open all locations or if they're going to utilize it at a single location under the statute.
And we're talking about not only standalone referendums, but we're also talking about primary elections as well.
We're talking about town committee primaries, which could be at this point on each registration side. I believe the Democrats have around 7,800 and the Republicans have about 4,500. So we're not talking a large amount of the over 20,000 registered voters that we have in town.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Mankey?
So just to clarify, the registrars of voters always had the power to call a standalone referendum anyway at any polling place they see fit. I'm assuming the council can make recommendations to the registrar of voters if we have a referendum, say in April or whatever, that we want to have it in all 7 places, but they have that power under state statute. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And just to clarify, the primaries that would be at a single place are only the Democratic town committee primary and the Republican town committee primary only. Presidential primaries, governor primaries, Congress primaries, all those things would be still at the 7 polling locations. Is that correct?
That is correct. Because when a presidential preference primary or a governor's primary is held, we're required to make sure they're held in the same locations that we will utilize in November.
And that makes sense. I mean, those are usually bigger turnout items. You know, if there's a primary for the Democratic town committee, the Republican town committee, there's not a lot of people that. There's no sense keeping all 7 locations open for those things. And I'm sure if we were to have a standalone referendum, I'm sure the council could weigh in and suggest we do more than one polling place.
Yep.
I'd also want to thank the registrars for their efforts, and I also want to thank them for taking all of our suggestions and sometimes suggestions on top of suggestions on top of suggestions, but I appreciate all their efforts on this. And I just think we should just move it forward and let the public weigh in on the ordinance.
So
public
before
hearing.
before us this evening, we do have a resolution that would set the public hearing. What we are looking to do for the public's sake is to set it on a night other than a council meeting. Typically, our public hearings are done just a few minutes before a regular council meeting because we don't usually get a ton of involvement. So we don't usually need a lot of time, but this is a big issue, and we know that there may be a lot of the public members that would like to weigh in. So we would be looking to schedule this on a night other than a council meeting night. So we were looking at Monday, March 7th at 7 p.m. So that would allow for enough time for as many members of the public to weigh in as they would like, and it wouldn't interfere with another meeting. So just throwing that out there. Councilor Menke, would you like to read that in for us?
I would be more than happy. Introduction. I hereby introduce to the town council's consideration the proposed ordinance amendment to chapter 121 voting districts, a copy of which has been filed with the clerk of the council. Resolved that the Newington Town Council hereby schedules a public hearing on March 7th, 2022 at 7 p.m. to consider the proposed ordinance amendment, chapter 121, voting districts, a copy of which is attached to this resolution.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Nagel. Any discussion on this motion? All right, hearing none. Councilors, if you would unmute. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We'll have our public hearing for the voting ordinance on Monday, March 7th at 7 p.m. Thank you, everyone. All right, next item is initiate charter revision process. There are two items under this agenda item. One is to create the Charter Revision Commission. We do have appointments this evening, as well as to charge the Charter Revision Commission with specific things that this council would like them to take a look at. That being said, once the charter is open, the committee has the right to look at the charter in its entirety, and we know that to be true, but we'd like to just make some recommendations for things that we've noticed along the way may need to be looked at or adjusted based on current practice versus the last time the charter was looked at. So we will start. The first item is to create the Charter Revision Commission. We do have a resolution before us. Go ahead, Councilor Menke. I see your hand up.
I'll read it. Resolved, the Newington Town Council hereby establishes the 2022 Charter Revision Commission, which shall consist of 5 members. Joe Harpy, 36 Baldwin Court, Party R, term 2/22/22 to 12/31/2050. Terms will terminate upon filing and acceptance of the final report with the Town Council. Anthony Gonzalez, 26 Baldwin Court, Party R, term 2/22/22 to 12/30/2050. Nancy Capello, 66 Pepperbush Lane, Party R, term 2022-22 and 2/12/31/2050. Chris Minor, 119 Revere Drive, Party D, term 2/22/2022 to 12/31/2050. And Kevin Burp, 16 Broadview Street, Party D, term 2/22/2022 to 12/31/2050.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor, that was Councilor Donahue, I believe, right? Thank you. All right, and Councilor Menke, go ahead.
Just a point of order. Kevin Burp is currently serving as de facto member of the Health District. He would have to resign before he can be officially accepted to the committee, because you can't serve on another committee while you're on the charter revision. So I would give him 3 days to resign. It gives him till Friday to send the town clerk an email saying he just would resign from the health district.
James, do we need to have that in the motion in some way, or how do we handle that to make sure that
No,
we're?
if we haven't received the resignation by that point, the council can move to replace.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other council discussion on the appointments that are moved? I just want to say thank you to those that have put their names forward for this process. I know this process can be long and arduous and difficult, and it is a very serious process. It is our basically our constitution of our town, if you think of it that way, as I do. So I very much appreciate these folks being willing to come forward and serve in this capacity. So I just wanted to say that before we go ahead and vote. I appreciate you all.
And let's hope it doesn't go to 2050.
Yeah, let's hope. All right. Okay. If you would unmute, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes, and we have a Charter Revision Commission. Wonderful. All right, next we have to work on giving them a charge of what needs to be accomplished, or what we need them to look at least, and to bring back to us. So we do have a draft resolution in our packet this evening with some blanks not filled in, that we have some language that we'd like to add, I believe. I believe that Minority Leader Page, as well as Majority Leader Menke, had brought forward some suggestions. And then James, I think you had a couple from that were considered from town that we had agreed to put forward as well.
That's correct.
Okay. Do you have them for the screen, or how do you want us to go ahead and discuss?
Let's see. So these are the proposals. The first listing here is your proposals that Councilor Menke supplied.
All right, so I can just read them so everybody can, in case I know some of the public is on their phone, it's probably hard to see, so I'll read them so everybody can hear them. We had recommended from our side to include a mandated review of the charter every 10 years, set up a committee, makeup, and timeframe for review. So the thought process behind that was that charter revision really should just be a matter of procedure and protocol. It's what's best for the town, just like we have our POCD for planning every 10 years, that this is something that should be reviewed every 10 years is our thought process on this, so that it doesn't become a political volleyball, which it can at times become, that it would just be a matter of council process and procedure. So that is our hope with proposing that. Review and update referendum limits to bring them in line with current expenditure amounts under section C408, page 9, and to define the special appropriation in a more clear manner, because that's been a bone of contention at times as well. And we would look, the town attorney certainly would be involved in the process to help with some of the language pieces. Review Article 6 and look at the number of members, specifically Parks and Recreation. Currently has 11 members. And I believe that the Parks and Rec Commission had made recommendations for that to be decreased. They wanted us to look at that as well. Review the document for any ambiguous terms like shall and may, make them clearer, just to clear up language. Review and clarify Article 9 personnel, specify who has control over Board of Education personnel under section C903, page 24. There's been some issues with that in the past, and we need that clarified. Change time on council organizational meeting to 7 p.m. under section C403. That was an item that we just have noticed over the years. After the election, the first council meeting, not sure why it was originally set as being our organizational meeting doesn't start till 8 p.m. right now by current charter. So we were looking to just change that to current, what we normally do is 7. It was just a little strange, and if they discuss it and find there's a reason not to do that, that's fine. Specify how commission and board members can be removed if they do not attend meetings, or if we are unable to contact them or conduct related to conduct unbecoming of a board or commission member. So right now there's a process in place, but if someone moves out of town, or there's just some instances where it doesn't make a lot of sense to go through a very formal process. If someone is not living in town, then they don't have the right to serve. They don't meet the qualifications. So looking to tighten up how we handle those situations. And then review the language for C603 library trustees. Right now it says selected by town on page 14, but there's some ambiguity on how that's done and what the real process is. So we want to take a look at that. And then do you have, I know,
Counselor Page's recommendation on page 3 at the bottom here.
Mitch, do you want to go through those?
Sure, we just added a few more to look at all the numbers, the dollars in the charter related to amounts required for referenda, bidding requirements, et cetera, and to determine if appropriate. It's basically bringing all our adjusting for inflation and costs of everything nowadays, just to see if we can get that to a contemporary status.
Yeah, that's right in line with ours as well. We had agreed on that. Yep.
Right. And to review staggered terms for councils and Board of Education members and other town boards, to look at that possibility and see how that might work, if that's helpful for our voters and for our process. And then the third was to review residency requirements for the town planner and for the police chief.
Okay.
So those are both from the parties. We did receive a few from the department heads. The first one doesn't really apply. There was a recommendation on the town attorney, and then we have two specifically on some language in the ordinances section for how the process plays out when a citizen wants to have an ordinance sent to referendum, and some language regarding our auditor. Currently, we have an audit committee, but we don't really have a charge for that audit committee. But we do believe that the charter should reference them as well, and possibly look at us as drafting some basic code language so that we give them some duties, whether it be every 2 years they review our processes and make recommendations, just so that there is a little bit more clarity in the process. And I will just, for the council's reference, Mr. Borup actually just supplied his resignation to me by email.
Okay.
I won't have a problem. As soon as we're still into that specific item, that's good to reference.
Thank you. Yeah, so those last two, the right of referendum on ordinances and the auditor, those are just language issues. I think those make perfect sense to move forward. We can certainly discuss that further for the council. If anybody else has thoughts on those two. I know for us, for our caucus, we are fine with what Mr. Page brought forward. I don't know how you feel about ours, Mitch.
They look good, Mayor.
Okay. Any other discussion by councilors? The two that James mentioned, the last two that he mentioned, I think makes sense to move forward if he sees a need for us to look at the language in the charter for the business. Any other thoughts, Councilor Menke?
Yeah, just if James, can you go back to ours, please?
Sure.
Just to clarify, where we talk about review, where are we going? Review the language on C603, library trustees. We're not wanting to change how library trustees are chosen. We're not wanting to change that process. We just want to spell it out a little, because right now it says selected by town, which is kind of ambiguous.
I think the fact that it says library trustees is the confusing part. The library organization has a board of trustees, and then we have members that are appointed by the town. There are 6 of them. I think it's just the language that's put together there that we just need to clean up.
Because the way it reads now, it sounds like the whole town chooses them, and that's not the case. So I think we just want to clean that up a little bit so it's clear.
Makes sense.
Okay.
So can we just agree to accept the ones that we presented, the ones that that the other side's presented, and those 2 that James presented? Can we agree on that?
Seems good to me.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
I'm in agreement.
Yeah.
All right. So James, do we read in, how many are those?
Kim has a hand up.
Oh, Kim, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's just a question. Do we need a motion for this, or are we agreeing by consensus?
Yeah, we're going to read the motion, and that's what I was just starting to ask James. Do you want us to read each of these into the motion that you provided in the packet?
Nope, actually, I'm going to take care of that for you right.
I think we can agree by consent, right?
Are you copying and pasting?
Right now.
Good.
All right. We are so lucky to have you, James. I hope you know we appreciate you. All right.
I want to make sure we had everything together. So
perfect. So there is the resolution, including the ones that we just referenced and mentioned.
So before we get started, the one last piece that we do need to discuss will be when the council would like a draft report back to it for review from the commission.
All right, so I had called, just for the council's understanding, I had called James earlier to ask him what a timeline would look like or a deadline would look like for a November referendum to put it out with the regular election. That being said, if the charter is done lickety split, they can bring it back early and we can consider that, certainly. But I wouldn't want it to go past November if possible, is my personal feeling. So I would throw that out for discussion.
Nope, not past November.
So I'll give you a brief history. Actually, together I put together a listing of the 2012 charter. The council actually received a rough overview on January 10th, but didn't actually give a charge to the commission until March 13th of 2012, and had the report back by July. So we're not really doing as much of a large overhaul on our charter. So I think it is a possibility that they may have it back sooner than that. But the council could give an end date point that says you'd like a report back no later than, say, August 12th or something to that effect. I think that might be one of our council meetings.
Okay.
And it sounds like we're leaning towards agreeing to have the vote on this on or before Election Day.
I think we should have it on.
On Election Day. I think
Unless it comes in early, we can, but I think.
Yeah, I'm going back. I'm going to play devil's advocate. So in the past, when we've done charter, I'm going back many years now for the first round at town hall before the most recent one. I know there was discussion about not wanting to do it in the summer, so to speak, when people are out of town, after kids get out of school, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That being said, we would be asking, I think it's July 12th would be what we would want it back by, James, if it's in November, right? So that we would have enough time.
If we're looking at November, we would have to either adopt it at our August 23rd meeting or hold a special meeting no later than September 6th in order for us to supply it to the state for the November ballot.
So we would want it back by July so that we have time to deliberate, discuss, and then move forward with the next steps.
Yes, because we still have a public hearing process that we need to do after we've met with the Charter Revision Commission to understand their reasons for their changes. So we still have a little process that happens after they complete their work.
Okay. So my only caveat I'm going to say to everybody is if the commission finishes early, comes back to us and says they want to do a standalone, then we would consider it. But I don't think it makes sense to require that. I think we should be aiming for November as a deadline. But I don't want anybody to come back and say we're discussing it in July when they bring it back to us and people are away, because that's just part of the process if we go to November. So we will be discussing some of the substantive issues as they come back to us in July and August.
I know
so that we can have it up for November if that's the case.
Just my arm.
So I'm just throwing it out there so everybody realizes kind of the timeline of all of it.
That's good. And I like having it on Election Day. I think the turnout will be better.
Any other thoughts, counselors?
Sounds good to me. So you want to give it what do you want it for the date to return by? The 12th of July?
When I had talked to you, we had said July 12th. Does that still make sense if you reviewed it?
I believe July 12th would work for us. Yeah, that first meeting in July would give us time to meet with the commission, schedule our public hearing. We could possibly do that for the 26th or the 9th of August. Still have time period if you chose to send something back to them and get it completed by no later than September 6th.
So I'm wondering if our first meeting in July is the 12th, do we give them the deadline of the 5th so that we have time to prepare it and get it ready for the 12th?
That report will be completed when it's supplied to me. So it's literally my turning it over to you as the town council and meeting with the commission.
Right, but we post agenda the week before, so I don't want it to come to us. If we set it as the 12th and they don't send it to the 12th and we're meeting that evening, we want to probably set it out the week earlier.
Yeah, that would probably be a good idea. Maybe we look at the 4th.
Well, that's a holiday. We'll give them until the 5th.
Okay.
Does July 5th work for you counselors? I see Counselor Nagel's hand up. Go ahead, Counselor Nagel.
It works for me. And And a couple of the things I want to mention, you've already just resolved. And with standalone referendums, no matter how many polling places there are, it's always a problem, or the argument has to do with in the summer, people on vacations, schools having work done that isn't done during the regular school year that might affect the polling places at schools. And having one just like a month before the November election, something like that seems to be something that kind of crowds things in, and obviously gives a great more work to our town representatives, our registrar of voters, and public may get confused. So I agree that a November referendum seems to be the most practical, clear, and get the greatest turnout.
All right. Any other discussion on this one? Before we go ahead and read it in, we have to read that big long motion in with all of our charges. If we're good with the date, we'll set it at July 5th. That way it'll be on our agenda for the 12th.
Now, you've just got that one piece we talked about earlier, which was financials. And of course, there's the dates I was looking for.
Say that again. I'm sorry. Can you say that again, James?
The financial information we had talked about. So in the 2012 charter revision process, the town council actually allocated $5,000 for the committee to do its work, whether it was its advertising, mailings to the public, anything of that type. It did actually happen that they actually had to apply additional funds to the committee to complete their work, which ended up being an additional $10,500. So almost $15,000 was spent in the process. So I want to make sure the council is aware of that we will need funds available, especially if the council wants to make sure that mailings go out to each household relative to the proposed changes as well. So that is something to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's not part of this resolution. That would be during budget process, correct?
Well, it depends on when they're going to need the funds. That could be in this current year. So that may be something we need to look at as an additional appropriation.
Okay. Okay.
But that's all I've got, and I'll put that resolution back up on the screen for somebody to spend some time reading.
I can't wait to see who raises their hand. Who's willing to do that for us?
Looking at the camera.
All right. Deputy Mayor Badraco.
Sure. You gotta move it down there.
Yep,
Thank you, Mr. James.
There you are.
Resolved. Whereas the town of Newington as a municipal corporation has the power pursuant to Connecticut General Statute Section 7-190 to appoint a commission for the purpose of amending the town of Newington charter. Whereas the Newington Town Council has approved the initiation of action for the amendment and revision of the Newington Town Charter pursuant to Connecticut General Statute Section 7-188 by way of resolution number 2022-18 dated January 25th, 2022, and appointed members to that commission by action taken prior to this resolution pursuant to Connecticut General Statute Section 7-188. Be it resolved that said commission is hereby charged with reviewing the current town of Newington charter for any inconsistencies with current standards in the state of Connecticut and for any inconsistencies that may currently exist with the state of Connecticut Constitution and or with any Connecticut general statutes. The commission is further charged to consider the following additional revisions. 1, include a mandated review of the charter every 10 years, set up committee makeup and time frame for review. 2, review and update referendum limits to bring them in line with current expenditure amounts. C-408, page 9, define special appropriation. 3, review Article 6 and look at the number of members, specifically Parks and Recreation, 11 members, page 13 through 15. 4, review the document for ambiguous terms like shall and may and make them clearer. 5, review and clarify Article 9 personnel, review who has control over Board of Ed personnel, C-903, page 24. 6, change time on council organizational meeting to 7 o'clock, C-403, page 8. 7, specify how commission and board members can be removed if they do not attend meetings or we are unable to contact them or conduct unbecoming a board or commission member. 8, review the language of C-603 library trustees selected by town, page 14.
Thank you. Seconded by Counselor Camillo.
Oh, we're not done.
There's more, there's
Oh,
more.
I'm sorry.
going.
Hold on. I got a
9,
second. I got excited. Sorry.
9, look at all numbers in the charter related to amounts required for referenda, bidding requirements, etc., and determine if appropriate. 10, review staggered terms for council and Board of Education and other town boards. 11, review residency requirements for town planner, police chief. 12, review language in C-410, right of referendum on ordinances to ensure that the existing language and timeline is properly outlined. 13, review language in C-609 auditor to include by reference the audit committee currently created under resolution 2021-58. Recommend approval of code language to outline duties of the audit commission. Be it further resolved, the commission is hereby charged to holding at least 2 public hearings on proposed amendments and revisions to the Town of Newington Charter. One of said public hearings will be held at the beginning of the process prior to any substantive work of said commission. A second public hearing is to be held after a draft report has been completed but not submitted to the Newington Town Council. Be it further resolved, the commission is hereby charged to prepare and provide to the Newington Town Council a draft report of recommended amendments and revisions to the Town of Newington Charter on or before July 5th, 2022. Be it further resolved, the commission, should it receive recommendations for changes to its draft report from the Newington Town Council, shall provide to the Newington Town Council a final report within 30 days after receiving said recommendations. Be it further resolved, the commission shall terminate upon either acceptance or rejection of the final report by the Newington Town Council. Be it further resolved, the commission, in carrying out its duties, shall follow the procedures and requirements as set forth in Connecticut General, where am I? In Connecticut General Statute, section 7-187 through 7-193.
Second.
Now seconded by Counselor Camillo. Threw me off there, Counselor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for reading that long one in. Any further discussion on this item? All right, hearing none. If everyone would unmute. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and we have our charter revision charge. We are in business. Thank you, everyone. All right, next item this evening is the recommended changes to the Town Council Rules of Procedure. We have been provided with a draft that was worked on by the committee for our consideration, and we are looking to take action on this item this evening to update and amend the council rules of procedure. This is common practice. After each election, the committee meets to make any recommended changes or revisions that need to happen that are recommended. So I would I believe the chair is Councilor Menke.
Right. I just have one change I would like to propose, just so we make it clear on agenda items. If you look at section 6, placement of items on agenda, I would propose we leave the first two sentences as they are, and we would just add the following 2 sentences. Items brought forward will be considered at agenda setting meetings by council members present. Items will be included by a consensus of council members present at the agenda setting based on appropriateness, relevance, and priority. There's a lot of times when we meet for agenda setting, we have to push some stuff off a little bit because the meeting may be long. We have a lot of other weighty matters, and we don't want to let the meeting go too long. So sometimes there's, as you know, from agenda setting, both Councilor Page and Mayor Debbie, some things get moved off until we can find a kind of a slot to put them in if they're not critical. So I would just add those two changes.
Okay.
Propose those 2 changes.
Any other council comment? Councilor Rada, I know you had your hand up. Go ahead, Councilor Rada.
Yeah, this is very small, and I apologize if it's nitpicky, but under 10, public participation, the second line, letters or emails supplied prior to the deadline shall be considered the individuals, and that should be L'(S), first opportunity.
Okay.
Sorry, I think I was an editor in another life.
No, I appreciate that because I'm the world's worst editor.
We'll
I
work
can't read
it.
what I think it's supposed to mean.
I did, I will mention it during public participation later, but relevant to that, it was Forrest Helby that did send a letter in for us to include in tonight's minutes. So I will make sure and reference that later. Any other council comment or question? There's two proposed changes, the punctuation and the language that Councillor Menke mentioned.
I was going to make one more recommendation, sort of based upon our items that we put on today.
Okay.
I'm actually suggesting that we also, just after new business, add in additional agenda items. That way we're not adding to a current topic, we're indicating that they were added to that agenda.
So, okay, I'm just trying to move my screen around, sorry.
No, that's okay.
So under consideration of new business?
Yeah, I actually suggested right in between the two.
So that's for anybody who adds something sort of like we did tonight, those two items we put
Correct.
under there.
That way we are actually showing them as part of the agenda as additional items added, because we've already posted our agenda previously within our 24-hour period. So I think it just makes sense that instead of putting it under new business, even though we indicate it, that in the minutes it be called additional agenda item, so people know that it did come back up as its own item. It wasn't part of new business originally.
That makes sense. I would go with that.
And it won't happen that often. It won't just be one of those
Right.
things.
We don't. I mean, we try not to add stuff at the last minute unless it's something that we need to, we didn't consider before. So yeah, okay.
Those things you think about as you're rewriting lots of things.
So we have 3 recommended changes to the draft language. Anything else?
And Councilor Menke, if you can make sure you send me that language for public, the additional agenda
Yeah,
item.
as soon as I I'll type it up for you and send it to you.
If you want, you can even snap it on a photo and I'll type it in. That's not a problem.
Make sure you send it to Kim so she can proofread it.
Yeah, right. Trust me, now that I have a proofreader, she'll be getting all my correspondence.
There we go. We have another bipartisan effort. Here we go.
There you go.
All right. So we have the draft that is in the record, and then we have 3 proposed changes, which would be adding the new agenda items after
Additional agenda items after new business.
After new business, the punctuation error that was noted in section 10, and then the 2 sentences that Councillor Menke has recommended. So if someone could go ahead and read in the motion and just amend under the second whereas, it would be the, let me see how we would word this, the Town Council Rules of Procedure document as amended in tonight's meeting.
That's fine.
You want to take that, Mayor?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, resolved, whereas the Newington Town Council amended its rules of procedures on an as-needed basis, and whereas the Town Council Rules and Procedures document was last amended this evening, February 22nd, 2022. And
no, that statement is actually for the previous document. So it should say February 11th.
Okay, February 11th, okay. Now therefore be it resolved that the Newington Town Council hereby amends its rules of procedures as indicated on the attached document.
Second.
Do we have to say the attached document with the 3 recommended changes made this evening?
With amendments, yeah.
As amended this evening, yes.
As amended this evening, thank you. That's where it goes.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Rada. Any further discussion? Councillor Menke?
I just would like to thank the people who served, both Councillor Donahue and Councillor Page, who served on the committee. We did, it was just pretty easy committee, and I just appreciate their efforts to get this accomplished.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, so we have the motion and we have the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. All right, now we get to move on to something fun, new business, and we have Firehouse Subs Foundation Grant Award. So you will see in your packet this evening that we, through our grant writer from Sonic, The Newington Fire Department has been assisted by Sonia Richmond from Sonic and has been awarded a Firehouse sub-grant in the amount of $47,155 that they are planning on utilizing for the extrication tools for the department, consisting of a Hearst cutter, combi tool, ram, strong arm kit, and accessories. And should it be necessary, the town council may approve the resolution to accept the awarded grant as outlined above during a future meeting if it is necessary. This is great news. And I see Tom LaPierre, you're on with us. Are you here for this item?
Yeah, in case you had any questions, Chief Trummer asked me to be here to answer anything for you.
Great. Do you want to just talk a little bit about the equipment that you guys are looking to get with the grant?
We have some, it's called, they're e-hydraulic tools by Hearst. We have one set that we bought when they came out. We wanted to upgrade that set and move this current set, move it down to TAC 2 as our spare. Obviously with the budget conditions that have been as of late, these things are hard to do when we look at expenditures of around $50,000 at a clip. Excuse me. So with the assistance of our grant writer that Town Manager Chapman provided us with, she was able to seek out some different types of grants that we've submitted so far, this being one of them, and it was awarded rather quickly. So we're waiting for the final presentation of the award that's supposed to come after March 12th, I believe. They have a pretty steadfast way of how they do it. So we're kind of just following their protocols. I don't believe there's any matching funds that the town has to put in for this grant. We did, after this one, we've done 2 others with Sonia. One of them is for our radio system, and that's through the federal government, the FEMA grant. And then we put another SAFER grant for an electronic sign outside of headquarters to help us with recruitment and retention. And I believe that grant is not, does not require matching funds either. So that would be 2 with no matching funds on the town side.
We like that. That's always the first question we get, Tom. So thank you for answering it without us even having to ask.
So we're still waiting for the final paperwork, if you will, and how they're going to do it.
Okay.
We're working on doing some marketing for them as far as announcing that we won this grant. So that's in the process now, and as we find out the final pieces, I'm sure Chief Trauma or myself will let this body know also.
Okay. Great. This is wonderful news, certainly for the town and for the fire department. Thank you guys for working on this with Sonia. I know, she's certainly worked out and getting us a lot of grants for really a great investment, and from us hiring her and her crew. But we're really glad that the fire department has brought forward these ideas too, so that we can move on them. So at this point, we don't need to take any action on this. We'll just stay tuned. And if you folks need us to do that, you'll ask us in the future.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually,
Thank you.
based upon their awarding,
Pardon?
sorry, based upon their award date, we actually will have this on the agenda for you to accept the grant on the 8th.
Okay.
So that will happen. And I know that Firehouse Subs has asked to be part of that meeting during the acceptance, just to have their PR as well. That's part of their request in their application process. So we'll make sure we get contact with the fire department to get an invite out to them as well.
Okay, excellent.
Maybe we can look into them coming to Newington. I'm sure we've got some empty buildings.
There you go. Councilor Mankey?
I think
I just would echo what your comments. I would just thank the fire department chiefs for looking into these grants. It's a good way to defray some of the costs associated with the fire department, and I appreciate the efforts and time that everybody put into making this grant possible.
Thank you. Tom, what were you saying? I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
I don't remember, actually. No biggie.
All right, any other council comment? Okay, I think we're all set. Thank you, Tom, for being here this evening.
No problem. Enjoy.
Thanks. All right, folks, next item is municipal solid waste disposal services RFP. Right? Yep. I skipped somehow in my packet. So we have, let's see, that we had gone out to RFP with ourselves, Weathersfield and Rocky Hill in a joint RFP due to the transition of the Mira waste to energy facility to a solid waste transfer station. Mr. Chapman, do you want to speak on this one?
Yeah, the three towns got together and felt that approaching this from a regional perspective may be beneficial for all three towns. So we're actually going to be interviewing tomorrow, 6, I believe, candidates for consideration, or maybe there's 7 proposals, but I think there's 6 companies involved. And each town will have 2 representatives doing the interviews tomorrow. The questions have already been prepared. So that'll happen tomorrow. They'll make recommendation back to each town individually, because as a result of what is learned from these interviews, it may be beneficial for all the towns to go in a particular direction, but we won't know that until we get the final figures on what exactly they're proposing and how it will affect each one of our towns. So we'll see what happens, and it'll probably be back on your agenda in 2 weeks for consideration and action.
Okay, great. Any council comment or question? Councilor Mankey?
Yeah, just a quick question. Will this change who picks up our garbage?
No, it won't change on who picks it up. It's all about where it's going to go to by our contractor that picks up right now. It may end up being still at Mira. It depends on what we learn tomorrow from the interviews. What we're trying to do is find the least cost that's fixed for the next several years to reduce the cost overall for the disposal of the recyclables and the solid waste.
And I just applaud you for going out with other towns. I think this is another example how we can regionalize and combine our buying power, I guess, or our selling power, however we do our garbage power, and get maybe a cheaper rate. So I appreciate that.
Yep.
Councilor Nagel?
Thank you. I also want to thank you, Mr. Chapman, for following through with this method of trying to find new and helpful ways to get rid of our solid waste. I know this is a big problem with the closing of a major plant in Hartford. In several ways, many municipalities, the Hartford area and the state are really going to be in a bind unless we move forward in some way to find another solution when others are disappearing from the state. So I commend you for doing this, and also the other towns for coming in and taking this approach. Having been on and off CROG for many years, I remember a couple of years with that organization learning more than I ever wanted to know about waste, where it comes from and where it goes. So I truly appreciate and understand how difficult this process could be, and I'm happy to see something is moving forward in a constructive way. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Nagel. Councilor Page?
I also wanted to thank the town manager for doing this. It was funny, I was driving to work this morning and heard a story on a radio station about this, and Hartford was talking about pulling out of Mira and how that was affecting other towns. And so it just makes sense. I thank you. And I also wanted to know, is there any impact or relationship to our recycling efforts and the cost involved in recycling, Mr. Chapman?
We're going to learn more about that tomorrow, actually. There are some questions that we have dealing with the whole recyclable issue, because some of the bids came in with a charge for recycling. Others come with we'll say a sliding scale, others with no charge. So we really have to get some answers to some of the questions based upon the bid submissions.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for your efforts on this. I appreciate it.
I will say, though, just so the council knows that this is going to be an ongoing problem going forward, 5, 10, 15 years from now. And And in my opinion, this is bigger than 3 towns. This is the state. And the state really has to step up to the plate. If they want to do something for the towns, this would be a good one to start getting involved in. Because it's not going to go away. It's just going to get worse.
Okay. Councilor Rada?
Yes, just a quick question for Town Manager Chapman. Has there been any discussion, or I'd like us to consider in the future discussion on composting, whether we begin to look at that as a town or do something regional? I know that other communities have done this. You know, it's a way to look forward and look into the future, and a way to be responsible and a little more environmentally sound. So I'm just putting it out there for something that we can think about and discuss in the future.
I will say that back in the 90s, we were composting over at next to Churchill Park on Main Street. However, there are some real negatives with composting, and that is the odor more than anything else. You know, we've talked briefly among the 3 towns about how we're going to deal with composting in the future, and how we're going to deal with solid waste, whether we should be removing all of the food products out of the waste stream and so forth. But there's a lot of work to be done. And again, I think that, you know, we really should be looking at the state to find solutions to this, because it is a statewide issue and it's only going to grow in size.
Thank you.
Any other council comment? All right, yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing how the discussion goes tomorrow and where we end up with recommendations. So we'll look forward to having that at our next meeting. Thank you. All right, folks, we're on now to the draft job description for deputy assessor. We have the draft in our packet. The draft description is revised from the previously approved job description, so this is not new. This is just looking at the existing and updating it and expanding job responsibilities for the position. Mr. Chapman, do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, this position, the deputy assessor, has been vacant now for over a year. Our deputy assessor retired and actually works part-time for us now. She's willing to come back and help out. But we looked at the job description that was currently on the books, and it is dated probably 25 years ago. And what we've done is taken that old job description and then recreated a new job description with input from our HR specialist and from our assessor and from the finance director. You know, we're trying to update all of our job descriptions to bring them up to today's standards. And this one is one that has been old for many, many years, and we have an opportunity to change it now before we go out and advertise for a deputy. So we want to get it in place before that advertising does take place.
I will say, when I reviewed it at our caucus, I mentioned that it looked like it might have been, the previous one might have been done on a mimeograph. So that speaks to how
it goes back again to the 90s or even before that.
Yeah, it certainly makes sense to be updating these as we go ahead and see that they need to be. So council, we have that draft in front of us. We'd be looking to take action at our next meeting on adopting this. Are there any questions or concerns about it at this point, or things we want to ask?
The pay scale remains constant. It's still I think it's A7, which is what it has been. So we're not looking to position at all.
Okay. All right, I don't see any hands up, so we'll continue on and we'll take action on that at our next meeting. So now we have 2 items that we had added to the agenda. The first one is the interlocal agreement for the multi-town equipment cooperative. Who's going to take this one? James or Keith?
I'll take it. This is another cooperative effort with the town of Rocky Hill, where we, in discussions both at the public works level and at the town manager level, identified the opportunity through using the COVID funds that were sent to the town. There's a big issue with Newington in that our waterway systems need to have more enhanced, we'll say, clearing and treatment, which this machine will provide 6 months of opportunity for us to go out there and really get into the Millbrook, Piperbrook waterway system and start, taking down excessive growth of vegetation and so forth, and clean up those particular brooks along with any others in town. We've been negligent in this for many, many years, and this is an opportunity to purchase a piece of equipment that is perfect for what we want to do it, and it'll cost us half of what it would have otherwise. So we're both towns are going to spend about $90,000 of COVID money, and that's absolutely supported by the COVID requirements for waterway systems. So it really is an opportunity to really get work done that has not been done for many, many years, if ever. So it's about I think it's a $180,000 piece of equipment, and we'll share that with Rocky Hill. We'll actually own it. It'll be in our name. It'll be housed primarily in Newington. That's part of the agreement that we made. So I will say that possession is 9/10 of the law. Sometimes we'll probably make out better because we own it and we house it and we could use it when we want it. But certainly we'll share, if they want it for 6 months out of the year, they'll get it for 6 months as well. But all of the details, the cost of maintenance and so forth are all worked out in the document you have for you. Maybe it's not in your document because we added this. No, it's all within a equipment sharing agreement, multi-town equipment cooperative that's allowed through state statutes. You'll be getting a copy of the whole agreement for your next meeting. So we're ready to move on this if you're ready to allow it to.
James, I believe you uploaded that into our also, so we do have access to that. Councilor Menke?
Just for my edification, this is a bigger piece of equipment that has like an arm that comes down and kind of mows the banks that are uneven.
Yes, I'll give you the description. It's called a Alamo boom mower. Now that's the attachment that goes on to the John Deere tractor that we'll be purchasing. And they'll be able to reach out into the waterway systems along the banks and be able to trim all that material to keep it under control in all of our waterway systems. So we're looking really for the waterways more than anything else for our use of the machine.
Okay.
Now, I don't know about Rocky Hill. They may have other uses for it, but we're primarily, looking at the waterway systems.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Bedrejko?
I know I think we share some tree trimming equipment, don't we, with Weathersfield? Are there other pieces of equipment that we share with other towns?
I think the tree trimming truck is with Weathersfield. I don't know right now of any other equipment we're sharing. We want to get back into that, Gail. We used to do more of this years ago, so this is going in the right direction now. The way we recognize that we can't afford to own everything ourselves. We have to share, and I think we're going to find that more and more with Public Works.
Well, that's what I was about to say. I think this is, I know we started very small, and this is, now another piece of equipment, and I think it's great, particularly, like you said, the cost of equipment is going up, particularly for some of these pieces of equipment that might only be used sporadically during the year. This is a great initiative, and, thank you for pursuing it and, continuing to look for opportunities.
Thank you.
Any other council comment? All right, we'll look forward to having this on our agenda at our next meeting. Thank you. All right, the next item was requested by Councilor Page, a discussion for the train station. Mr. Page?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And I do want to thank you, Mayor, and all my councilors present for giving me an opportunity to make this very brief presentation. I know it's getting later, although I don't want to jinx it, but it looks like we may have a shorter meeting than we've been having lately, so that'll be good. And I don't want to make it too much longer. So
No, you did it.
I did. I jinxed us. I want to thank you all, but I also want to thank sincerely our town manager and our town planner for invigorating this discussion with their presentation in January, where we did speak about the train station, and there was some fact gathering that went on, and I thank you for that. I also want to thank the council that did vote on this in June of 19, and that included Councilor Anist, Councilor Race, Bedraco, Del Buono, Maricini, Minor, Sarah, and Zartarian. And then in August of that year, after the council had acted unanimously and bipartisan, of course, the TPZ commissioners voted in favor, and that included Chairman Aida, Commissioner Camillo, Commissioner Fox, Commissioner Sobieski, Commissioner Woods, and Commissioner Braverman. I want to thank all of you for taking that step. And that was a step taken in response to the Hartford line being developed in 2018. And the Hartford line has taken off. I know with the pandemic, not a lot has taken off now that everybody's home working and doing what we're doing, which is to be on Zoom. So both the Fast Track and the Hartford line have had lower attendance of late, but we're going to be thinking long term. And I think that these are exciting times as we look at public transportation options and mass transit in not only Newington, but in the Hartford region and in the Connecticut River Valley, as we look going all the way down to New Haven, up to Springfield, and now proposals that, and I've shared with, I think all of the council, but certainly at least with Majority Leader Mankey and the mayor, the CROG study that was done in April of 2021, which outlines, and I'm not going to get into it tonight because I'd have everybody asleep in 10 minutes, all the economic benefits, the quality of life benefits, the environmental impacts that will benefit our community and our region by going ahead and getting all aboard with being involved in rail. Other towns are doing it, and I think we should too. Just briefly, and some of you know more about this history than I do, but I've had some fun learning about our trolley and our train history in Newington. Actually, it goes back, our trolleys go back to 1894 when the first trolley ran, as you probably know, from New Britain to Hartford and back, and it went along New Britain Avenue and Maple Hill and Robbins, and then Main Street and Connecticut Ave, all the way up to Hartford Ave and into Hartford and then back again. And I think of when I've seen a couple of the pictures that are out there in the from the Historical Society or at the library, it makes me think it sort of looks like San Francisco with a trolley car going through through town. And it would be kind of cool to have that again, but that's just an impractical, romantic thing. But it would be a pretty neat draw, I think, if we had a trolley going through town. Those ended from 1894. They ended in 1948 after the war, and that kind of coincided with the existence actually of trains that went through town. As many of you know, our train station began in Newington Junction in about 1850 with passenger rail. There were rail lines put in before that, but it really took off in the 50s, 1850s. And we had passenger rail with Amtrak going up to 1959. And of course, after World War II and with the expansion of highways, 91 and 84, we all were getting in our cars and loving our cars, as many of us still do. And we were pumping out all that carbon dioxide, and we were experiencing lots of crashes and lots of deaths and clogged up highways. And so we're still having all that pollution and unsafe driving. It's been crazy out there on the road. And so that went on from about 1959 until recently, like I said, 2018, when we had the Hartford line reinvigorated and the discussion began here in Newington. Right now, we have about 33 trains that pass through Newington every day. If you look at the combined routes between the Hartford line and Amtrak, we have about 33 trains that go right through our town every day. And if they would just stop, we could actually get on them and go to other places. And that would be beneficial for our commuters. It would be beneficial for people who are touring the region, for folks who just want to have a safe and efficient means of travel. I think it's about $6 to get down to New Haven from $6 or $8. And in June, like I said, of 2019, we had a unanimous vote from the council and a near unanimous vote from the TPZ. We all did some really important work there and committed to the TBDD, which is the development along Cedar Street, 565 Cedar Street, and the understanding there, and then if you look at all the documents as I have, is that Newington Junction, it neither had the neighborhood support nor the practical capabilities to drive economic development as does the Cedar Street area. So that's why that was selected and voted on so strongly. And the town really has been excited about this. The pandemic hit, like I said, things have slowed down, and now we're here talking about this again. I just want to close by saying the economic benefits of having a train stop that goes through our town 33 times a day, I think, is remarkable. This is an exciting opportunity. I think it can improve our quality of life. We can get some cars off the road. I think we need to not just think of 2022 or 2023 of the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. I think we need to think 30 years down the road. We need to think about our kids and their grandkids. And what is the future of our region? What's the future of our town vis-a-vis public transportation? And if you look at the studies across the country, any community, large or small, that has gotten involved with rail, passenger rail for commuting and so forth, they expand, they grow, they draw folks who want to live in this area for convenience and all the benefits that I've outlined. We can do something to think locally and act locally to decrease our carbon footprint. And so I'll close just by saying, you know, when people are together a long time, they renew their vows. They get together and they renew their vows and they recommit to their relationship. I'd like us to consider renewing our vows as a council and as a town planning and zoning commission, and get together with our town and recommit to working with the state and the federal authorities and make this thing a reality. I think there's a lot of money out there with the money that's been put out from the Biden administration, and we could take advantage of that, working with our state and federal legislators. I want to thank you again for the time tonight, and I welcome any feedback. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I will say, Mitch, I appreciate your passion for this topic, certainly. But I think that there's a misperception that somehow the council is not committed to a train station. That's not the case. And the vote that was taken years ago was based on the TBDD not approving a certain location for the train itself, but the state made it clear that they wanted it at Cedar. And the vote that happened was based on TBDD. But we did reach out to the state. We had the planner reach out, and the responses that we got from them are on the screen now. And it's actually hard for me to read, so I'm gonna look at my other screen because it's bigger. But she had asked, I'm trying to see his name here, David Elder from DOT. Is the DOT open to revisiting conversations related to the locations of the train station in Newington at this time? How about in the future? The response from him was that at this time, the Connecticut DOT does not have funding for the design or construction of a rail station in Newington. If or when funding is identified and committed to a station in Newington, Connecticut DOT will update its existing studies related to citing a station in either location and engage the municipality again with its findings. Given there is no funding, opening up these discussions again at this time is premature and speculative. Is DOT open at this time or in the future to discussing the scale of the development, particularly the size of the parking lot associated with the train station? And the response from DOT was the parking at each facility will be part of the design process and its scale will be based on the site's particular setting. And then are there any ongoing or recent conversations between DOT and CCSU regarding their plans for Eastern Campus or expansion in general? And that was not at this time. And those questions had come out of the joint meeting that we had. Oh, there's one more, sorry. And she had asked for the ridership, which I believe he said he's still working on. Yes. So I know that there's a passion here that that you bring forward to the council, and I understand that completely. But the state is being pretty clear with us that right now there really isn't an opportunity to do much moving forward until they determine that there's funding or there's availability and there's an ability to design the station. So I'm not sure that there's any council action to be taken at this point until we hear something different from the state.
No, and I appreciate, oh, sorry, Mayor, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
No, I appreciate that, Mayor. All I'm asking for, not tonight, we can do this another night, is that every council member come out definitively with their position on this. And because if you look at how other towns have done this, and as I've said to you privately, and I'll say it here, towns would kill to have this opportunity, to have 33 trains going through their town, to have a cement platform and they stop. This is an amazing opportunity economically and for all the reasons I've stated. I just am asking all the counselors to come out with a definitive statement that they endorse this. They think it's great. Let's continue to what, in a bipartisan way, the other councils have done. And that we're sending a message to the state that when you do get the funding together and we can look at federal funding, then we're ready to roll and we're all on board with this. We're not hemming and hawing and sort of shrugging our shoulders. Oh, I guess it can't work out. We're excited and we want to make this happen. That's all I'm asking for.
All right, and I would just point out too, I think economic development is a real driving force around these stations. And we really have a lot going on in that area already on Cedar Street. I think we've done an amazing job with economic development, even with just the busway there and you know.
You have. And I've said that before and I'll say it again. And Mr. Chapman and anyone else, you and others have been involved. There's a lot of cool stuff happening. We can build on that.
Okay, I see some other counselors with their hands up. Ms. Counselor Camilla.
Well, train station would be nice, but be careful what you ask for. What happens with the state after they've got it up and running, they turn it over to the town and then we're responsible for it. And now it's another cost to the town. It'll cost us more than the money it would bring in. So we really have to think about that too.
All right, Counselor Donahue.
I mean, we can all get out there and say we're for it, but I mean, this could be 10 years down the road and it's going to be a different council. The town's going to look different. Everything's going to look different. So, I mean, I think we got to, temper our enthusiasm with what the state's telling us, right? Because I mean, 10 years from now, nobody's going to really care what John Donahue had to say about the train station. At least, I could hope they would, but I don't think they're going to.
All right, thank you. Any other council comment or question? All right, I just want to thank you, Mitch, for the information that you provided tonight and for the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marianne. Thank you everyone for indulging me. I appreciate it.
All right.
I wanted pictures of the trolley, Mitch.
You got it, John. And I care what you have to say, John. I don't know that I will in 10 years, but.
All right, next item this evening is resignations and appointments. We have a few in our packet for Development Commission and TPZ. It's just appointments this evening, I believe. Who's going to go ahead and take that motion?
Do you want me to take that, Mayor?
Sure, go right ahead.
Resolved that the Newington Town Council hereby makes the following appointments. Development Commission, Hyman Braverman, member, address 39 Churchill Way, Party D, term 2/22/22 to 11/30/2023. Vacancy, resignation of R. Rue. And Town Plan and Zoning Commission, Stu Drozd, is that how I pronounce it? Drozd, alternate, 74 Glenview Drive, R, Party R, term 2/22/22 to 11/30/23. Vacancy, resignation of B. Haggerty.
All right, is there a second?
Oh, we're not done yet.
More.
Oh.
Parks and Recreation Board, name Eileen Francolino, member, address 116 Lydell Road, Party D, term 2/22/22 to 11/30/25, reappointment de facto term. Edward Marcian, member, 891 Willard Avenue, Party D, 2/22/22 to 11/30/25, reappointment de facto term. Donald Woods, member, 82 Ivy Lane, Party D, 2/22/22 to 11/30/25, reappointment de facto term. Bill de Blasio, member, 68 Harold Drive, Party D, 2/22/22 to 11/30/25, appointment term expiration of J. Wynn Johnson. And Timothy Hutfagner, member, 32 Old Hatchery Lane, Party D, 2/22/22 to 11/30/23, vacancy, resignation of M. Cranian.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Counselor Menke. And Counselor Menke, you have your hand up for discussion?
Yeah, I just want to point out that Councilor Page and I worked this out. One of these appointments is an R appointment, but we've arranged to for the good of the order and for the good of the Parks and Rec Commission to succeed them one. So I think it's a good chance to us to work together to get something accomplished.
Thank you. And if I may just make a correction, James, I think Party Max should be 7. No?
It should be 7, correct?
It should be 7. Yeah, I copied that from the last one because I had to do it real quick today. But yes, I will correct that in the permanent record.
No worries. Thank you.
All right, any other discussion on these? All right, folks, if you would unmute. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, next we have refunds for approval for February 22nd, 2022. Deputy Mayor Bedrejko.
Resolved that property tax refunds in the amount of $31,768.06 are hereby approved in the individual amounts and for those named on the request for refund of an overpayment of taxes certified by the revenue collector, a list of which is attached to this resolution.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Nagel. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And then we have minutes of our February 8th, 2022 regular meeting. I would entertain a motion to accept those as written.
Second.
So moved.
So moved by Counselor Braverman.
I move
seconded
approval.
by- What was that, Counselor Mankey?
I move approval.
All right, I'm sorry. I heard Counselor Braverman first. So motion made by Counselor Braverman, seconded by
Okay,
Thank
I'll second it.
Okay.
Counselor Mankey. Thank you. I'm sorry, it's a little glitchy on my end. I don't know what's happening. I apologize. Any?
I think it's the wind.
It could be. Any discussion or changes to those minutes? All right, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Next this evening is written and oral communications from the town manager, Mr. Chapman.
I would just say that our budget is coming to a conclusion now. You will be getting our town manager's proposed budget over the next several weeks. We've tried to be fair to all departments and, you know, we're still looking for a reduction in the mill rate as we've promised them. A lot of commercial businesses in town and residents. And we're still shooting for that, but we'll see how it all shakes out when things are done. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments from the council? All right, we will move on to council liaison and committee reports. Deputy Mayor Bedrejko.
Yes, Counselor Rada and I attended the Conservation and Wetlands Commission meeting, and as liaisons, we were requested to bring some information back to the council regarding the Culver Street application and the approval. There were irregularities in the public hearing process because after the public hearing closed, the applicant was allowed to provide additional comments and testimony. And the rules are that once a hearing is closed, an applicant isn't allowed to provide further testimony or comments because the commission has to deliberate at that point solely on the information it has on record, and nothing can be added after the public hearing is closed. So the applicant shouldn't have been allowed to interject itself after the hearing closed because it really didn't allow a chance for the public to have any kind of rebuttal. So the chair and the commissioners of the Conservation and Wetlands admitted, you know, freely that this did occur. It was an error. Although several stated that their vote was not impacted by any of the additional comments made by the applicant. Now, during that meeting, 3 members of the public spoke during participation, and they are the ones that asked Councilor Rada and I to bring this information back to you, back to the council, just to make you aware of what was going on, and perhaps if anything in the future requires any kind of intervention from the councilor. But what these 3 members asked the commission in particular was that they consider postponing signing of the wetlands permit and rescinding their own decision until more review can be done of the matter and the process and the procedures. But the discussion was that the commission and the town planner didn't believe that this was allowed, for the commission to make a motion to rescind their decision, that it wasn't allowed under state statutes, particularly since there had been no appeal made of the decision. So further discussion among the wetlands and the Conservation Commission led to the town planner being directed to charge the matter to the town attorney and refer to the town current attorney for legal opinion on whether the commission, meaning the wetlands, has authority to rescind a decision or delay signing the permit on a decision that hadn't been appealed, simply based on how the decision was made in terms of the process. And secondly, if the process on how the decision was made could or would be able to negate the action, the approval. So again, the town planner has written to the town attorney for an opinion on the matter. And as of right now, I don't believe an opinion has been rendered. But that's basically what Councilor Rada and I were asked to bring forth to the council. Councilor Rada, do you have anything else?
No, I think it was well stated, and you hit all the points. The thought was, and again, this is the reason why we felt that it needed to go to at least to the town attorney for consideration, is the question of the appeal period had passed, and one thought was that now the only next step in the process would be to appeal through a court decision rather than appeal to the commission. So as Councilor Budrako said, I'm interested to hear what our town attorney has to say about this. I know that we've heard of this for a while, and I wasn't surprised that it came before the Conservation Commission. But right now, I think we're in a holding pattern, waiting to hear what the response is from town attorney.
Okay. One other thing that kind of came up in a very general way that Councilor Rada and I had heard, and I think we're somewhat in agreement on, is that there were some broader statements made, alleging, possible issues with an inconsistency in application, let's say, of rules and regulations by some of the land use commissions. And land use commissions are very highly regulated by state and local statutes and regulations. And serving as a member of one of the land use commissions is, first of all, they're, obviously they're all volunteers, but it requires an awful lot of knowledge and study and detailed, expertise on these rules and regulations and how they apply in different situations. And in addition to the land use regs, these commissioners also have to be astute and aware of, such mundane things as, Robert's Rules of Orders, particularly in terms of, public hearings and deadlines and requirements. So a few of the commissioners actually did state at the meeting, and that there is no real new training for brand new commissioners to any of the land use committees. And perhaps that, from a town perspective, and even for actually some new members of the town council, that some kind of training could be created so that on a yearly basis, new members to any, of the real key of the regulatory versus advisory commissions can get some training on some of the important and problematic areas to look out for, such as Robert's Rules of Orders, public hearings, time deadlines, maybe even some Newington live case studies that have been problematic in the past. And again, a few commissioners have said that this would really be helpful for them because they're really walking in blind, sometimes into the middle of some sticky situations. And if on a yearly basis, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be, live or in person or in Zoom, but maybe, if there could be a video that each new commissioner has to, review or whatever, and you sign off on that they reviewed it, but just to give some kind of assistance and more professional training to these volunteer individuals who have some very important roles in town. And that's something that the town council can request of town staff to put something together.
Yeah, I know we just had that recently for land acquisition, but I know, it was a nice overview, but I know what you're saying. There may be some more that we can do. I appreciate the update, ladies. Thank you. Counselor Page?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say, Councilor Mankey and I sat in with the Board of Fire Commissioners the other night, and I was really pleased to hear, and I wonder if Mr. Chapman can just help me understand it, to confirm that I understand it correctly, that the new emergency radio system will be put on the state side, which my understanding is it's a much better system and should be more comprehensive of coverage and responsive to the needs of our first responders and so forth. That seems like a really great move. And if you could say more about that, Mr. Chapman.
Yes, the public safety radio system has been studied now for just about a year with our IT director, Paul Boutot, heading up the study. The objective is to make sure that our public safety entities, all three first responders, have communications at all times. And we've been going through everything from testing of radios in various locations throughout the town to identifying what types of equipment we need. All this is going to be presented to you at the CIP plan because it'll require funding beyond what was in this year's budget, certainly. So I think we have all three responding departments, public safety departments, on board. It's just a matter of now going through the inventory that they've requested and trying to make their requests fit into the monies that we feel are available and will be available going forward. So it's been a long process, but one that we probably will end up with the state. However, we don't know on a final basis yet how we're going to have this thing configured because there are some issues that we're still trying to work through. But it would appear that the state system is probably the best for us to use going forward.
Thank you very much. That's great.
All right, Councilor Nagel?
Thank you. Side note, first of all, just to continue what the conversation right now, Mr. Chapman has kept the previous council informed about many of these things. So those of us that were on the previous council, if they check their memories, should be aware of this process and how lengthy and well thought out it has been going. It's good to hear that it's continuing and that Councilor Page has asked something to clarify for him. Which you may not have known about. I'm here to report the library board recent meeting on the 14th. Things relative that the council should be aware about or know about. They are concerned about positions that have not been filled, 2 positions over a period of time. I briefly tried to look back to see how far back that goes. I haven't yet. And Mr. Chapman, if you could be able to give me that information so I can share that with them, I'd appreciate that. And obviously not right now.
This would be, excuse me, the staffing of the library?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, I believe that goes back before even when you came aboard as the town manager. At any rate, if you could just share that information. It's come up before and they had a conversation about it again. It would be nice just to give them for my or someone authority, give them the facts as to what the situation is. Also, there was a pipe that burst in the library, not a major thing, and the town promptly took care of that. And also, they are going through the process of a feasibility study that the library board is funding in terms of, as you know, their desire to renovate the library and to bring it up to date. At one point, they're fully aware that indeed we are about to have a centralized facilities committee, unlike how things have been handled in the past. They are discussing an ambitious plan to have their act together to present. However, I don't know how this is going to work to have it go in referendum in November 2022. I thought you should be aware of that fact. I had not heard that before, and it's just information to pass on to you, and also to reinstate that they do know that there is a change in terms of how things are handled when it comes to buildings being renovated. And I know all of us on the council are well aware of the need for the library to be renovated, and how our independent survey stated that the library was at the top, near the top, if not the top of the list of things that are major concerns that would involve a referendum, just to keep you aware of that. And those are the two major things that they discussed that I felt that everyone here should be aware of. That's it.
Thank you. Any other council liaison reports? All right, we'll continue on. Our next item this evening is back to public participation. I do want to mention before we begin that Forrest Helvey did send in a letter for the record, which I know, James, you had mentioned earlier. If you don't have it, I did re-forward it to you so that it can be attached to the minutes of this meeting.
Have the original and the forward.
Okay, thank you. All right, I have two members of the public with their hand up. The first is listed as David. If you could just identify yourself by name and address, and then we have our 3-minute time limit.
David Horgan, 30 Candlewick Drive. I was very pleased to hear from Mr. Chapman that town hall COVID restrictions are being mostly lifted. With that knowledge, I respectfully request that future town meetings and public hearings be reopened to the in-person public attendance. Thank you very much, and thank you all for your service to the town.
Thank you. The next is 070, which I believe is Miss Lyons.
Hi, Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. I had originally thought about speaking in the beginning about being opposed to the changing of the time limit for the first public participation and leave it at 4 minutes. But after listening to the public participation, I'm in favor of the 3 minutes. The comments by Councilor Badraco regarding training of persons that are new to commissions is something that she and I think, have discussed before, having attended a lot of meetings. It's very difficult to sit through and have to rehash everything with people as to what's happened prior to them coming on board. And I know it's hard to get volunteers. It's very hard to get volunteers, but I really think that perhaps people that are appointed should have some sort of a background, especially in the land use commissions and so forth, which leads me to my question regarding the charter revision. The Charter Revision Commission is something that the town is going to have to live with, or not the commission, but the results of the commission's recommendations, if they pass, is something that the town's going to have to live with for 10 years. I'm familiar with 3 out of the 5 people that were appointed to the commission. 2 of them I do not know or do not recognize their names, and just was wondering that perhaps, I know you can't do it now because it's too late, but think about when you're appointing people to commissions, that gives some sort of a background as to what their expertise is or what their interest is. You don't have to be an expert to be interested. I realize that, but there should be some sort of qualifications required, I would think, to be able to go through a document such as the charter revision. I have sat through 2 charter revisions, and it's a lot easier if people are familiar with what they are supposed to be looking at and are familiar with the document itself. I'm disappointed that neither side has found it necessary to look at the sending out the town attorney to bid rather than being a political appointment. I will be attending the meeting and making the suggestion that they review that. I don't think it's going to go anywhere because I have attended the other meetings and public hearings, and what the people on the commission want is usually what goes forward. But given the fact that people are a little bit more vocal now, maybe they will listen to some suggestions from the residents in the town. And I'm hoping that those who have any ideas as to what they might like to see changed, that they show up at the meetings and not just throw the question out on Facebook and to people that aren't going to be the ones taking a vote on it. I thank everybody that volunteers for these commissions. It's not an easy job. Finally, I'd like to thank the town manager once again for making an effort to do something about maintaining our waterways. As I've said in the past, and you all know, I'm very, very upset that things haven't been done in the past, but I thank him for doing something now, and maybe going forward it would be a primary concern to those that are in this town. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lyons. All right. There are no other members of the public with their hand raised, so we will move on to remarks by counselors. Deputy Mayor Bedrejko.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to the Newington Police Department, because they recently publicized that they had raised enough funds to implement Project Lifesaver. And it's a program that they've wanted to take part in for over the past 2 years, but it needed some funding. And for those who don't know, Project Lifesaver, it's a townwide emergency response system capable of finding individuals, adults or children, who have some cognitive impairments, let's say, and can cause them to wander and become lost. So if you're enrolled in this program, which you can do so by calling the police department, the clients will wear this battery operated bracelet, and the Newington Police Department through this funding has gotten special radio technology, and they've trained certain personnel so that if a client is missing and if the caregiver notifies the police department that they're missing, trained NPD personnel are immediately dispatched, activate the equipment, and begin searching. And this Project Lifesaver is actually a nationwide program, and it's reported, I read that they've already located over 3,873 people nationwide, through this service. And currently in Connecticut, there's 13 Connecticut police departments who participate. So I am so happy and so proud that Newington had the desire and made the efforts to participate in this program. And it's also, I think, important to recognize the local businesses and individuals who assisted the police in being able to implement this. Because in addition to the funds from the chief's donation account, the major donors, according to the NPD and their the publicity that went out, were Massage Envy, Connecticut Bail Bond Group, William and Susan Sandstrom, Jill Price, Elizabeth Ong, and Vincent Howen, who all helped in this effort. So I want to say I'm proud of the police department. I know it's going to be a very important service, and I'm pleased to those who helped make this happen.
Thank you for talking about that. I know I had posted it up earlier in the week, but thank you for mentioning all of that this evening for the public. Anyone else? All right. If there's no more remarks, we will. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Counselor Donahue, seconded by.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Page. Any discussion?
Second.
Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
We stand adjourned at 9:30 p.m. All right, folks. Thank you. That's an early night for us. We're doing well.
Yeah.
Nice.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.